Yeah. But we're not gonna wait around, right, Teresa? Would rock and roll.
Oh yeah,
You froze. Uh-oh. Not the freezing.
waiting. No, they can join in.
You're frozen, Teresa. Teresa, say something. Not today.
I'm gonna call her.
What?
You were frozen.
Who's laughing?
All right, I'm gonna let folks in because we
What
need to start on
is
time. Are we ready,
Wait,
ladies?
wait,
You said,
wait. One second.
wait.
Somebody's
Okay.
calling me. Hey.
What's the link?
Oh, okay. I don't know. My janky internet. Okay. Bye. Okay, Alita, that was Jessica let me know was my janky internet working up, you know. Okay.
All right, we ready?
Yes, we are.
All right, I'm admitting everyone. Good evening, everyone.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We are just about to get started. All right, Teresa.
We can rock and roll.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening for the State of Black Long Island Equity Council's Women's History Month event. We, often, struggle with having these webinars and workshops and trying to theme them out. And not that women just deserve 1 month out of the year. We do recognize ourselves every single month. And so this is going to be a very nice, interesting discussion because we're going to be talking to the women of SOBLI. And SOBLI is the acronym for the State of Black Long Island. And these are women that have been working with us for several years now, making sure that we keep alive the issue of equity and inclusion in all aspects of life in Nassau and Suffolk counties, and then use this as a model for other communities to build on. So I want to welcome all of our guests today. I want to say hello to our esteemed panelists who's speaking with us tonight, our SOBLI women, and a particular shout out and thank you to our project director for the State of Black Long Island Equity Council, Alita White Barnes. Thank you, Alita, for your coordination, for all of the work that this council is doing. And I'm going to turn it over to you. I didn't even say my name, so I hope everybody just kind of knows who I am. Teresa Sanders, President and CEO of the Urban League of Long Island. And again, thank you for joining us tonight. And I will turn it over to Alita.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Elita White Barnes, the project director of the State of Black Long Island Equity Council, and I have the pleasure of introducing our women of SOBLI participating tonight in the roundtable. Jessica Toussaint is a motivational speaker, certified life and success coach, and agent of change who provides teaching and guidance, helping others discover their hidden power within as they journey toward wholeness. Jessica is also the founder and president of Bridge to Promise Incorporated, a nonprofit organization that aims to equip underserved young people today with the tools and resources necessary for societal and personal success. Jackie Burbridge has been a member of SOBLI since 2018. She's currently a fundraiser for the Progressive Working Families Political Party. She is a co-founder of the Long Island Black Alliance alongside SOBLI member Shaniqua Levin. Last year, Long Island Black Alliance convened a coalition, Long Island United, to transform policing and community safety, which is now laying the foundation for a newly imagined system of public safety across Long Island. SOBLI member Lorraine Richardson McCrae is an educator for the South Country Central School District. She currently is pursuing her education doctorate in supervision and leadership at St. John's University. She serves as an adjunct professor at Stony Brook University. She is a Diamond Life member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, charter member of the National Association of Parliamentarians of Metro New York, member of the Long Island Black Educators Association, National Coalition of 100 Black Women's Suffolk County Chapter, Black Girls Run as Run Coordinator and Girl Trek member. Barbara McFadden is the president, CEO of McFadden and Associates Healthcare Consultants. Her firm provides medical legal consulting services to law firms representing clients associated with deviations in the standards of practice in healthcare. Ms. McFadden also provides advocacy coaching to clients seeking to resolve complaints associated with healthcare providers. She is a registered nurse with 50 years of diversified experience on long-term care, managed care, acute care, and has a master's degree in health service administration. Donna Raphael earned a BA from Don J. College of Criminal Justice with a concentration in forensic psychology and a master's in clinical psychology from Adelphi University. She's an advocate for criminal justice reform and equitable solutions. Donna has over 20 years leadership experience supporting youth, families, and senior citizens throughout Long Island. Donna is involved in SOBLI as the Education Action Team co-chair, and she serves as the environmental chair for Roosevelt Freeport NAACP. Donna is on the board of the Women Diversity Network and the Hempstead Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, ladies, for joining us tonight. Teresa, we are ready to start the conversation.
Well, we are going to jump right into it because we have an audience of people that want to hear your thoughts and your opinions. And we want to keep this very relaxed, but I will ask you to be concise with your statements and to please save some time for other panelists to make sure that they have time to answer some of the questions. But and let's start with Barbara. Barbara, I know I put you on the spot, but your legacy of engagement in the community, your ability to wear so many different hats and wear them absolutely well. As an advocate, you have had such a range of experience than most people in their life. What specific experience can you point to that as a woman on Long Island was like that aha professional moment for you?
I'll have to say it was your study, the SOBLI study, that clearly put in front of my eyes and could not be denied with fact, and none of it was fiction. When I read all of the papers, every single page, I said, wait a minute, I've been here a long time. I've been here since the 70s. I'm now 70 plus, And you mean to tell me the same things are happening again? And so that was my aha moment. And it kicked me right out of a sense of complacency that we had finally arrived, we made it, there was no colored signs, and our children are going to some of the schools. But facts is there. And if anyone hasn't had the chance to read the SOBLI study in its entirety, take a time to do it, because certainly this year, what happened on January 6th was certainly a wake-up call, and the fact that we're having trouble with HR1 tells me that SOBLI study is critically important to us here in Long Island. That was my aha moment.
That's very telling, that we realize, in our own walks, like all of a sudden, like, wait. So I'm gonna go to Jackie, because I know Jackie got some fire going on. Every time I see her, there's a trailblaze behind her. But Jackie, what was your aha moment?
I think for me, I think my aha moment came at the same time as motherhood. So my first and only child is 5 years old now. And I think as I started to think about the life that I wanted to create for her and the childhood experiences that I wanted her to have, I started to think about them in comparison to the childhood experiences that I had growing up in one of, Long Island's predominantly Black 11 zip codes. And the realization hit me that I don't want that for her. I want more opportunity. I want less guns and drugs in the environment. I want, a higher quality, better funded education for her in the public space. And it just really got me to thinking about all of the things. And that's kind of what led me to SOBLI was, me trying to determine a way for myself that I could actually influence the bigger picture of things that would kind of steer her childhood and make it something that she didn't necessarily have to survive, because the resources are so lacking in our communities. Sometimes just making it out is an accomplishment. And I didn't want that for her. I want her childhood to be like a fertile ground for her to grow from and be whatever or whomever it is that she chooses to be, because I had the ability to expose her to all of these options and opportunities. And, just seeing and understanding that so much of what we are experiencing is as a result of external and environmental variables that we actually do have the power to change, I think is what really kind of, put me in a space where I was like, all right, there are things that I can directly impact for her, the house that she grows up in, the people that she's around. But then there are things that I only have so much power to mitigate, but collectively as a people, we have a greater power to mitigate a lot of those things that are impacting the way that our children and our next generations will be able to grow and experience the most formidable years of their lives. And so coming to SOBLI was an opportunity for me to actually, put that mind frame into action.
That's interesting, because, sometimes your aha moment is so deep that it takes you years to realize, did I just have that moment? So Jessica, you've been with SOBLI for a while, and tell us, what was your aha moment as a woman working in different systems on Long Island, and maybe point out some of the systems that you've been working in?
So I would say my aha moment is just the opportunity as a young person, and how much we're not, as young people of color, as much involved in the system, right? Civically, how we're not aware, and how there is a lack of transference of knowledge. So we have a lot of the older generation at the table making a lot of these decisions. They're heavily involved, but there's such a gap in terms of us being as involved, us being as visible. Whereas when we look at people our age that don't look like us, that are more involved, that are raised to, in their DNA, to be more civically engaged, I think of that. I also think of, you don't know what you don't know until you become involved. So it was the report, to go back to Barbara, how much money we're missing out on, how much of the disparity
So we lived a life like this, and it was, it was just our journey all the time. Like, okay, this is how we live, until you start to compare it, and it's not apples to oranges. It's not apples to apples, but it's actually apples to oranges. And so just looking at it in terms of schooling, right, and looking at the intentional disadvantages, right, looking at the intentional pipeline to prison, right, like the intentional practices. And so just being aware, there's a lot of things, we've heard of it, but actually seeing it into play and looking at proactive measures that we can play to actually change some of it and to actually be a part of the solution. So I think that was like my aha moment, like the role I could play, right? And I think in one of our meetings, we talked about some of these changes we may not totally see in our lifetime,
right,
but we are part of that, And so to think of it that I may not see all of it even in my generation, but in my children's generation might be affected by it, right? So how important the work is now, I think is so important. So I think that was my aha moment in terms of the role I play, in terms of the gap that I get to, the information I get to pass down to the next generation. So I think that was like my aha moment.
This is deep because, as you're all talking, I see heads shaking like, yup. I want to remind our guests here to please use the chat. You can share what your aha moment is. We want to keep this dialogue going because, again, you represent the wind beneath our wings as we go through SOBLI, and we're talking about equity and change. We've got to hear from you. We're not just talking to each other. And some of the stuff you pointed out, Jessica, in terms of that, like generational, like gap, our communities have a big problem with that. We have folks that literally die in their positions and don't pass on no information. And then all of a sudden, we always start from ground zero. What's your aha moment, Lorraine? What was it, or what still is it, if it's continuing to happen?
Good evening, everybody. My aha moment, I think because I was born and raised in New York City, and then I became a transplant to Long Island, came out for college at Stony Brook, and then began to live here. I didn't have a good understanding of Long Island and all of the things that come with living in Long Island, coming from Brooklyn, coming from the city. It was just such a different atmosphere, just such a different system that I wasn't necessarily prepared for. So when I got a teaching job here, there was a moment when I was walking down the hallway and I hear the kids and I realized there's a real disconnect in understanding of themselves. In New York City, we have a lot more, and I think there's a lot more opportunity to intermingle, and be exposed to a lot of different cultures and a lot of different atmospheres. You can go from one block, 3 blocks down, you're going from a Jewish neighborhood to a Chinatown to, a Caribbean neighborhood, and you have all those different flavors. And I was very blessed with a mother who wanted to experience and wanted us to experience all of it. And when I came to Long Island and I started working in the schools, I noticed that the children, the students really didn't have a sense of their history, a sense of culture. Going to the museum, my mother would wake up on a Saturday morning and say, put on your stuff, let's go. We're gonna, go up to Manhattan. We go on Museum Mile. We go to the Guggenheim. We go to MoMA. We would eat at a cafe. If she couldn't offer us a trip to Paris, she was going to give us as much culture as she could to prepare us. And one thing that she told me, now this was just her talking, so I don't want nobody to take this personally. I really wanted to go to Hampton. And she said to me, you're going to always be a Black girl, but this is a white world and you need to learn the rules of the game. You'll never be able to win the game if you don't know the rules. So she encouraged me to go to a POC, to a predominantly white institution, PCI. I don't know what the right acronym is. So that was my path. But while I was there, the most incredible thing happened. I got more into my Africanism than anything else. And that was wonderful to have that community. And I noticed, and I felt like I had a noticing that the students didn't have that kind of community. I didn't know how many families were having those kind of discussions. Like my family would sit and talk about, like I knew the Emancipation Proclamation didn't free anybody. At a young age, by listening to the elders. I didn't know how many of those kids were having that kind of conversation at home, like how much of that wisdom was being passed on about who you are, as much as we can share. Because of course, there's many of us who still don't know all of our roots. We're trying to do ancestry and all kind of DNA to figure things out. But as much as we could share in our telling, and that has been that was probably one of my biggest aha moments in my professional career, that it was
You're talking about something. I want to point out something that you brought up, Lorraine, because this is interchangeable with the cultural experience. Like my family's from Harlem, but my kids were born on Long Island. And my daughter went to a predominantly white school. All her life, she said, I am going to a HBCU. She said, I just need to have that experience. And, she ended up at Spelman, which totally changed her life, but she needed that. The same way you just said you needed that, because if we're going to coexist in this world with other people, you do need to have those intercultural exchanges and opportunities to be in environments that with people that are not like you. And so if we can understand that it's okay and not feel intimidated by them, that's the way we start to grow and learn. I got another question that someone had asked us, but I'm gonna ask y'all that one later, because I want to hear Donna's aha moment. Donna has, again, moved through seasons of experience, of giving herself to the community. She just came off of a campaign run. And when you serve as, an ultimate political servant, that's something that, you really give of yourself when you put that out there. Donna, what was your aha moment? What keeps you coming back and re-energizing yourself? What is it?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I think my aha moment, this is my second wave, if you will. I'm ready for my third, but I started my career, interestingly enough, in pharmacy. And if you know a lot about my personality, you'll know that that's an interesting turn, because pharmacy is very black and white and very serious. And so it was kind of counter my idea about how things were laid out for me in terms of my life. I decided at a midpoint in my 30s to go back to school and really go after my dream, which was really to work with individuals, young people especially, but mostly work in the nonprofit sector. I grew up down the street on Long Island. I grew up down the street from a group home. And I'd always known that there was going to be some way for me to kind of connect to that space, because it was very confusing and I didn't really understand it. But I think that one of the things that kind of connects the two, so my relationship now as a senior director in a nonprofit and my work in pharmacy, is my aha moment was the disparities. So I began to see that in the way that medication was dispensed, and that our community was really focused and unfortunately being addicted to certain substances in a way that wasn't meted in an equitable way for them to be able to kind of move off and move past that. And when I came into the nonprofit industry, interestingly enough, I came in during the crack epidemic. And so all of what I had learned in pharmacy really helped me and helped the work that I was doing with young people at that time in a group home, ironically, the very group home that I grew up down the block is where I started my career. And that was very, very important for me. But it gave me the opportunity to kind of utilize those skills that I had in pharmacy, but to begin to change and really focus on stop over medicating at that time. Young people who were being given Concerta and Ritalin and so many other medications to offset the fact that they were either born crack addicted or that they themselves were in families that were had an overabundance of addiction issues. And so, when I came to, fast forward, I utilized all of those skills and then just kept like Teresa said, just keep moving forward in my work, really absorbing many, many, many things to make this work look different for our young people, helping them to, as Jessica said, to really be able to get some of the information, but also to be able to share out information. I don't plan on leaving this industry with everything that I know. Helping young people to amplify their voice and really take in what I've learned and be able to give it to them. But when I came to SOBLI, what was the aha moment, if you will, was the ability to be unapologetic about my beliefs. The goals that I had set for myself was aligned with, because I was there at the very beginning where we were meeting, at a whole different place before we wind up at our new 2 locations, but different groups of individuals that had come through and began to share out with us and share with me this exchange of information that was so important for our community, and helping us to understand where we needed to go and really writing down a plan that helped us to set goals for ourselves and for our community. While I'm living in Nassau, really absorbing what's happening in Suffolk and then working together to create one plan for all African Americans in Long Island. We spoke a little bit about our loss in terms of finance, but we've gained a lot too by coming together, bringing all of these content experts together and also learning from one another what will work in our different communities, what will work in a larger community. And then, even being afforded the opportunity to travel, a couple of times to other areas, and then being in those spaces and finding out, guess what? Around this country, people are dealing with similar issues, and everyone is looking for a pathway for us as a community, as people, to get better, to do better, and to be better. So thank you.
Thank you, Donna. You all are talking with voices of authority, right? This is just natural to you because you can get on these panels and just speak. But how do you tell other women how to bring their voices out, how to elevate their thoughts, how to make sure that when the marching is over and when you're finished yelling and screaming, that, okay, now how do you sit down and broker that negotiation? What is it? How do you teach that? We don't learn it in schools. As a matter of fact, most systems we're in as women oppress us. We're supposed to be quiet, but how do you encourage other women to elevate their voices and to stand strong? And I don't know who wants to take this first. Lorraine, you sitting there, and Barbara is our woman of season. So we're gonna let Barbara go first.
Thank you. It brings me to something that's real to me right now. I'm sitting on an inclusion and diversity committee for a national healthcare organization. And so I've selected 2 of the young Black women who are extremely bright, like these young women. And so I've set up a monthly Zoom call, and it's entitled Road to the C-Suite. The reason I say that to you is because each of us, I'm speaking of particularly those of us like myself who've been in the struggle all of these years, it speaks to something you said earlier, Teresa. How do you do it? Each one teach one. So I've selected 2 young women, and we talk about the strategies. We talked about strategies, knowing the game. Lorraine, your mother said you got to know how to play the game. So if we're going to integrate, in this instance, healthcare environments, particularly administrators like I was, and basically white organizations, you got to learn the strategy of the game, learn how to pick your battles, strategize as to where you want to be. So our agenda right now is, they've given us, we pulled up a folding seat, but I don't want to be on the national board. The two of you must be. And so we're going to strategize to be that. And I will be the person who is making all the noise, because I'm not looking for a job. The nuts and bolts of what I'm saying is, it's an obligation of those of us who are seasoned to individually help mentor the young women and young men around us to be able to sit at the table. Because guess what? I know some of the backstory and I know some of the secrets and I understand what must be done. And just because you don't have a particular thing, let's strategize and say, how can three of us decide to work together so two of us end up on the seat? Again, it's the obligation of each of us who are seasoned. It doesn't take all the years that I have. But if you've had 10, 12 years of being on a board or looking at things, you have an obligation to select and teach one and help those come up the ranks so that we don't have vacancies.
Barbara, you brought up, and your history in the healthcare industry is so important, because that is an industry where we are customers. I mean, basically everybody is a customer at some point in time, but this is also relevant in the education system where everybody is a customer at some point in time. But when you look at the hierarchy of that system, how do you teach these other young women coming in there the strategies? What is it, Lorraine? How are we going to get our young women to the point where they're in leadership positions before they get fired because they said something silly? Like, what's the strategy?
The first thing that I do whenever I see any of my sisters have been hired into our school district or in any area, when they say they want to be a teacher, I give them my cell phone number, email address, whatever it is, and I will mentor them and share every piece of 23 years of experience working in South Country Central School District. I will share all of that with them. In my own experience, 2 years ago, we had a teacher of color hired. She was hired as a substitute, but she had ESL certification. So she came into my department, and I had been beat out every time to be a mentor. For whatever reason, nobody would ever put me as a mentor. I sent an email to HR, union president, everybody. I said, I always just let it go. I never push, but right now I'm going to push. I am going to be her mentor, because if anybody's going to protect her for her first 2 to 3 years and make sure that she gets tenure, that's going to be me.
Yes.
So I put myself, because I have 23 years experience, and they know I won't use bad words, but they know I will let it all loose. I will definitely, I will stop the whole show, the whole train. We not going no further if I have to. I never pull it out unless I really have to. And at that moment, I felt very strongly that I did not want anyone else to give her that information, because I don't know how they would give that information to her. I know how I was received, and I know what hell I went through, and I was not going to allow her to go through that. So the mentoring part is extremely important. And within all of my different organizations, that's something that's very, very important to me. And also making sure that they know, and if they have a plan of action. Or one young lady that I've been mentoring for years, she now said that she wants to be an administrator. And then she brought up all the reasons why she shouldn't. The baby, my husband. And I told her, I did the same thing. Don't do what I did. Start saving some money to the side, make you a little hush money account, so that when you need to make that switch, you don't feel so worried about finances. So I'm giving her some tools, because I might not have gone into administration, but if she wants to go to administration, I'm going to be there to push her all the way to superintendency if that's what she wants to do, because I have all that knowledge. I have all of it. I didn't do it for myself, but I can definitely see somebody else through. So that's my goal.
And it's the giving part, Lorraine. So, and this is the part that I was pointing out with Donna, being so given, and we are given as women, we give until we don't have nothing else for ourselves. But also being able to share your intellectual capital with someone, whether they get it, that this is something they need to keep in their toolbox or not. You have to continue to give, because they're always going to have that aha moment. Everybody does. At some point in life, you go, oh, that's what Lorraine was telling me, and you have that experience where then you can pull it out your toolbox and use that tool. But, and I'm looking at you, Jessica, because what is it? Maybe I could switch this question around. How do the younger women, how do you know when to, embrace a mentor, or how do you know to listen? Some people just talk and they really not saying anything. But how do you know how to, y'all know I'm telling the truth, but how do you know when to plug in, Jessica, when you meet somebody, like you don't know Lorraine, but you meet her and you go, okay, that's a sister I need to, hear from, a Jackie, a Donna, Barbara. What is it, Jessica, now at this point in your life draws you to someone that can mentor or direct you?
I think it's a really good question. I think it's people watch, right? And I think it's the presence that you show up in. And I think it's being consistent, right? And so like Donna, whether she's on social media, whether she's in person in a meeting before COVID, she was always available. She was always in front of the community. She was always advocating. So people see that, right? So I think it's being consistent and being consistent in small ways. I think it's also being available. I think this generation, especially young people, they're all about being authentic. I think a lot of times we like to tell people the results, but never the process. So I think it's important that we tell young people the process. Tell them, why are you telling them not to do X, Y, Z? Be honest about your mistakes. Be honest what it cost you. Be honest what you saw it cost your mama or it cost your best friend. I think a lot of times we are not honest with our truth because of shame, but instead looking at it as these are opportunities that I can save someone else from what I went through, right? But with transparency. And I think the other piece is being available. And I think as women, we have a lot of things. We're juggling children, we're juggling husbands, careers, but also being intentional, even if it's 1 hour a month to mentor a woman, right? Being intentional on checking on someone, being intentional. I haven't heard from so-and-so, let me actually follow up, because relationships take time to cultivate. They take time to build trust, to be consistent, because it's one thing when someone says, call me. And it's another when you actually see that they actually are consistent, that they are following up. Lorraine's not just giving me her number, but she's actually saying, hey girl, you didn't call me when you said you were going to call me. Lorraine's asking me, how did the first week go? How did my review go? It matters that I matter, that, and a lot of women want to be seen, right? Not be seen doing, but know that they're seen, know that people see them,
That's an important part, because when I was growing up, my mother and my sisters, and we moved from Harlem, Lorraine, and we moved to Long Island, but we always was family oriented. Like my best friends was like my sisters and my cousins. Like I have friends in school, but for hangout, like my family was the core and the friendship. So I learned more from my sisters and my cousins than I did from that next circle called the friends. And this is really where I want to bring, Jackie in and bring Donna back in, because, Jackie, for you brought up something very important, because you have a young daughter. It's the game totally changes when you got kids on the line. Things that you never thought you'd say and do, when you got to step up and protect your children from the system, from a dysfunctional system, your level of advocacy is different as a parent. Tell us though, because as we're talking about mentors, as we're talking about steering people, because we can't keep our kids close to us all the time. How do you expand that circle, Jackie, as you're growing a young woman, and Donna, with the work that you're doing in the community, how do you direct these younger people to authentic sources, resources that can help them grow and develop, particularly our young women?
So to take it a step back to talk about, how you like kind of be present for people, I think a lot of it, like Jessica said, and like what you just mentioned, Teresa, leading into the question is just being seen. What Barbara and Lorraine talked about were very intentional acts about kind of grooming and reaching out. But sometimes even before that, it's just the visibility of somebody doing something that you might want to do or operating in a space that feels that you feel drawn to. Like Teresa, I think I mentioned this to you before, and if I haven't, I'll say it again now, that I was well aware of who you were before you ever knew who I was, because as a Black woman in the white-led nonprofit space on Long Island, I was seeking out people who I could identify, and you were at the top of that list. And so from years ago, just from me kind of researching you on my own to us coming to a place where I count you amongst some of my dearest friends, and, you're the one in the group chat telling me, Jackie, there might be some legal ramifications to you saying that publicly, and just kind of being the voice, you know what I'm talking about. Yep. Being the voice of reason is really powerful to me. And it's just, and talking about my daughter and seeing me, sometimes my daughter watches literally every single thing that I do, to the point where if I get something to drink, she'll get a cup and give herself something to drink and make sure that the levels of her juice matches mine. And I'm like, that's a little too much pressure. Okay, I'm just over here trying to live. And you trying to be me, and I don't even know if what I am is who I need to be. So I think you provide that guidance by like expanding your village and getting connected. For me, it was getting connected to someone like you or other women like Retha, Shaniqua, Donna, Erica, Alicia, all of these women that I've had the opportunity to kind of get to know and who I would hold up as really valuable role models for my daughter and have the ability, my daughter thinks like Shaniqua is her best friend. I'm like, that's my friend. But I don't mind, I don't mind her watching Shaniqua because I love what Shaniqua does. So that's, that's fine for me. And it's the same thing in a professional space. A lot of times I don't know that I ever worked either closely with or underneath another Black woman in nonprofit on Long Island. So I didn't have that readily available to me, but it was, I don't know if you call it the law of attraction or what, that led me to being able to come to SOBLI and yes, develop my own relationship with you. But even last year when I was running for office, just because I created a space where there should not have been a space for me, I made that space and I moved in it, and other, younger Black people, men and women, had expressed to me an appreciation for that and a desire to learn more from what I did. And I'm completely accessible and available to do that, and will do that however I can, just because I know now, and I didn't know. And I'm fortunate that I was able to kind of build that plane as I was flying it, just because of connections and relationships that I had built along the way. So to your question, it's building those relationships, and us as, being more mature or being more aware of what is out there, the obstacles that exist, the opportunities that may exist, even though they may be hidden, us determining what those are and then sharing that with people, younger women, younger Black women specifically, who we know could benefit from that, that information, and just being accessible, really, I think is really the key to it.
And for those women, like Jessica said, to see the good and the bad sometimes. Like, my mother and her sisters wouldn't even go to the mailbox without what they said, their face on. They was in full makeup every day. I mean, and I used to go, y'all do this every day. You won't even go to the mailbox without your face. That's what they used to call it. I got to put my face on. But, we're now at a point where we could be natural. We could accept who we are. I could go outside. I could spend a whole day with nothing on my face and not worry about it, because people have to see the perfection and they have to see the flaws to understand you're real, so that they can open themselves up to learning. And this is now to the Donna question, because her piece of being seasoned in a community has really allowed a range of people, to look to you, Donna. Now there's folks that want to run for office. They've seen a couple of Black women, running for office, and I'm proud of what I see SOBLI leadership doing. But Donna, how do you guide them, through this process so that they don't just see, oh, Donna's beautiful pictures, she's running for office, I want to do that. How do you guide them like, okay, this is the stuff that you don't like, that you still got to go through to reach that level of perfection? What is it that you do?
So first of all, I listen both ways. I listen to younger people and I listen to seasoned people because everyone has information. I don't know all of it. I love my millennials. They'll hear me say that a lot because the things that they know, whew, thank goodness that they know it and they're willing to teach too. Yes. I'm willing to teach and I'm also willing to learn. And I think that that's so important. I sometimes I say in this field, the reason why I do this work is because you don't know my whole story. I was one of those that got away from doing a whole lot of stuff. And a lot of that has to do with there was none of this social media, right?
Right.
But I also come from a family of mostly all women. And that in itself is ideal for someone to create and to support someone like myself who wants to listen, who wants to learn. Women that in their own right are teachers and lawyers and so many other things that allows me to learn. But then there's an expectation that since they told me, I need to do something with it. And I believe that being seen and being authentic is true because I really want other people to succeed. Because when you succeed, it's not like a cliche with me. It really isn't. Because when people succeed, then we all succeed. I surround myself with other women who I am not jealous of. There's no room for that. I want them to be able to add to our story. It's all of our story. And so I'm taking from them and I'm giving at the same time. And there's no expectation if I don't get anything back, right? Because I'm giving freely of myself because I really, really believe that. I believe in God. And I really, truly understand that the level of generosity and is because that's what was given to me. And when I say that I've gone through some things, I think most of us on here have. And so what you see is the result of me working that out. And sometimes some of you are being used to help me work that out. And you don't even know it because I'm taking from you what's the best that you're giving to me because it's helping me to kind of expand my lens. It's helping me to expand my language, my thoughts, my ideas. But I'm also want to do that for other people. Running for office is not easy.
Right.
It's easy. And, to my sister Jackie, she understands, and many other people on here, running for office is not easy because you are out on Front Street. And every day you're wondering, everything that I say, somebody's watching. But I'm okay with that because I believe that I'm a good person, that I have something to offer, and that whether people absolutely vote, the message is still out there. It's still lingering, right? And so other people could still understand that if it wasn't me that was successful in winning this particular seat, I'm still not going anywhere. I'm still in this community. I still live here. I still work in another community that looks just like this community. And so the expansion of it is still going to be there, right? And I believe in the people that I come encounter with. We talked a little bit about culture and, something, I'll just play a little game. Something people don't know about me is that I went to school. My mother was one of those women who was from, the 60s, and she grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. And so when she had my sister and I, it's just the two of us. She wanted us to have a different idea of what the world was. And I actually went to school where my sister and I we were 2 of 4 Black kids that were in the entire school. To learn to navigate that system, when we talked a little bit about systems before, to learn to navigate that system, I think has helped in terms of my way to be able to articulate what I need in a way that allows me to get what I need, but also to teach other individuals that while we feel things, it's true that we feel, but all the time we need to make sure that we are maintaining our own level of integrity, we're protecting our own heart and mind, and that even when we are given, we still have to find a space for ourselves to be able to be here for the next person or the next generation. And I'm all up for it. I'm excited by whoever's coming behind, but believe me when I tell you, for those of you that know my work, you know that I am as equally available and proud to be working with my senior citizen as I am with working with my youth. And so that's a little bit about how I share that out.
This is a good segment, Donna, to, we're going to move to some of the panel questions, but I'm going to end with this question that we had gotten prior to this panel kickoff. And it was so interesting. Alita and I talked about it in the office because the question was from a person that wasn't Black and wanted to know, first of all, is this panel somewhere where she should be? You know, and it kind of threw us off because we're like, yeah, did we give an impression that we didn't want anybody else but just Black women? You know, and so we replied and we talked about the inclusiveness of our work. Like, while we are focused on lifting up Black communities, brown communities, this kind of work is something that anybody can engage in. And we look for those exchanges that if you need me, you know, I'm there for you. The only way this world is going to really improve is where we are interconnected with each other. So you have to care about what happens in Black and brown communities. I have to care about what happens in a Jewish community or Asian community. I have to care. If I don't care and if you don't care, we're right back to where we started, you know, years ago. So if we want to improve, we must be inclusive. But I want one of you, and then I'm turning it over to Alita to ask some of the other questions. I want you to answer this question, and I'm going to read it how it was written to us. So the question was like, what are some of the concrete things that white women and white people in general can do now to help fight this white supremacy and not just modeling anti-racism behavior? What do you say to white people to get them on the same page in a concrete way to improve these inequities on Long Island? And I don't know who wants to start. Lorraine's mic is off. She's like, my mic is off. I am ready. Lorraine is ready to kick it off. Go ahead, Lorraine.
I'm gonna take a little page from my sis, Amanda Seals. It's not my job to educate you. It's your job to educate yourself. Put yourself in the position to get that education. You have to first acknowledge that my history, my existence, my culture, my background, all of that is important, and it is woven into the fabric of this country. If you haven't taken the time to educate yourself, it is not incumbent upon me to educate you, but I certainly can open the door for that discussion. But it's not going to be on me to make sure that you have all the information. Come into these spaces. We invite allies. Yes. And I think in the Black community, we have been the most forgiving, loving. Okay, so I'm in Black Girls Run. There have been white running clubs since forever. But here we are in Black Girls Run, and what do we have? White women in Black Girls Run with us. Not an issue, not a problem. It was our space, but we were more than happy to welcome you in, even when your running clubs did not welcome us in. So we've always been open to having the discussion, but there has to be an acceptance and a reckoning There has not been a reckoning in American history where this country has taken the responsibility for the lives and for the cultures that they destroyed. There's never been that reckoning. So until there's an acceptance, and I'm not blaming, and I don't want anybody to go away feeling guilty, but there has to be an acceptance of what has happened, and then we can move forward. That's my take.
Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you, Lorraine.
Can I
Go
ask
ahead,
Teresa?
Jackie.
Okay. I think people who just need to listen, like if it's not your lived experience, listen to the people who have lived that experience and are sharing. Because I used to work for a white woman, who on my way out, I gave my 2 weeks notice because I accepted another position and I was leaving. And on one of the last days, she asked me, there were a group of Black women who were working, you know, in a certain sector of the jobs within this organization, and they worked closely together, and so they formed a friendship, and so they kind of moved around as like this pod, you know, and I was at a different area of the organization, so I wasn't as tightly knit with them as they were with one another. And the director on my way out asked me, what can we do? I forget exactly how she worded it, but she was asking essentially why these women were so tight with one another and what could be done to or why maybe they weren't necessarily having like social interactions with other white colleagues the way white people were having with themselves. And she kind of framed the question as like, you know, what could be done? Why is this happening? And I said to her, it needs to be an intentional part of everybody inside the organization to make these women feel comfortable and accepted and not excluded. And I gave her the example of the fact that I was the only Black female at a director level position in this organization. And there were 3 or 4 other white female directors who would go to lunch together every single day and never extend to me an invitation. And I said to her, I'm not saying to you that these women are racist or that they're excluding me because I'm Black. I don't know what the reason is. I just know that I'm the only one who is a female director in this place that's not invited to this lunch every day with these other female directors. And she took offense and flipped it back onto the other group of Black women and kind of said, well, they need to be doing more to open themselves up. And I'm looking at her like, you literally just asked me. You just asked me what could be done. And I told you, and I gave you my own experience of, you know, what leads to a sense of exclusion, and your response is to be defensive. You're never going to fix the problem that way. You're never going to fix the problem. I'm not even understanding why you asked me if you weren't ready to receive the information and then act on it. So, you know, you have to be willing to receive the information and act on it. At the same time, if someone is telling you that they're experiencing something as racist, even if you don't believe that the people who are committing the act are doing it to be racist, you still have to address that issue if you're in a, you know, position of leadership in whatever your space is. And so, you know, it's active listening and it's actively doing something about it. And then at the very least, if you're not going to do something about it, then get out of the way while we do the work.
Alita, I'm gonna turn this over to you because I know Alita's like texting me, you know, you running over time, but you know, we should have known that and did an hour and a half anyway. But Alita, go ahead.
Well, thank you, ladies, for participating. I'm gonna give you guys, I can only snap one hand, so I'm gonna snap. This was awesome. This was a great, authentic conversation. And that's what we wanted to have. We wanted to make sure that we were solution driven with the conversation and not just, you know, talking about all the issues. So I thank each and every one of you for your participation. And I'm going to invite you all to join the movement, become a member of the Urban League of Long Island. We also have 7 action teams of the SOBLI Equity Council that you can join, and everybody can join action teams because there's a lot of work that needs to be done and we are energized to make those things happen. And so those action teams are health, education, housing, policy and advocacy, justice, and economic equity. The teams are designed to focus on related equity issues across Long Island. We're not focused on any one particular county. We cover both Nassau and Suffolk County. So you're welcome to support us. You don't have to be a resident to support the work. Please also go to our website at urbanleaguelongisland.org. I'll put it in the chat for more details. Please continue to support our events and review our social media accounts. Right now, we are doing a highlight of the women of SOBLI who are sharing the quote that they use to guide them in life. So we ask that you also look at our social networks. And thank you again. Back to you,
Before you
Teresa.
go, before you go, Lita, I just had a minute to scroll through the chat. So all of you, this SOBLI report that we're talking about, you can get it off of the Urban League of Long Island.org website. So urbanleaguelongisland.org. The report is there. You can download the abbreviated or the full report. And also in the chat, a couple of things coming up in April. We are kicking off our campaign for achievement, which really is focusing in on the positive aspects of achievement, from kids K through 12 up to young professionals up to our seasoned adults. We have the summer youth employment and training jobs that'll be coming up for 14 to 21-year-olds. We also have our National Achievement Society, which is a achievement society for kids of color, to make sure that they understand it's okay to be smart. It's not corny. When you speak properly, it's not fucking white. It's just being who you are and being an achiever. And so we want to continue to lift that up. And we need some volunteers to help us with that National Achievement Society and that honor group. It goes from Nassau to Suffolk County. For anybody willing to volunteer and work, just send me a quick email or drop it in the chat. We will reach out to you, because it's very important that our kids don't succumb to the negative images, thinking that they're cool because they got suspended. You're not cool when you get suspended. You got suspended. You lost some learning time. And so we need to encourage our kids that achievement does matter. And then we'll be moving into the summer with some hot summer fun, hopefully socially distant. Even if it's virtual, we'll do some virtual stuff, but we hope to be going back to Sag Harbor this summer, even for a nice, sitting on at the yacht club and just enjoying each other's company. But we are going to try to do something. I am socially starved. I have to admit, I am socially starved. I will sit 10 feet away from you just to be out and to have some social time. I want to again thank Alita. I know there's a lot of stuff in the chat. We didn't have enough time. I should have known that, because when we get these intellectuals talking, we never have enough time. I want to thank Barbara, Lorraine, Jessica, Donna, and Jackie so much for your leadership in the conversation. All of our guests that are here tonight, thank you so much. There's some of you that we may have to do this again and get that next wave of SOBLI women in here to talk to the public. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Don't forget, drop some stuff in the chat if you want us to know. And please be safe, wash your hands, continue to wear your mask, and get your vaccinations. Have a good night. Thank you.
Night.
Night.